Welcome all of you to our Earth Care series, Earth Summit. All summer long, we have different topics that go along with how we might better care for the earth environment around us. And I am so grateful for our topic this morning. As we get more people gathering here, it's a funny day in the Spanish market. People are everywhere trying to find parking spaces and maybe down there, over here, and all that stuff. But we are right here this day, and so look forward to our presentation. And I'm going to have Esther introduce our speaker, our convener, our person this morning who's going to help us think through a lot of issues. And so, Esther, I'm so grateful for you and your daughter. So please, Esther.
I'd like to introduce all of you to my daughter-in-law, Jen Milnes, and she has a great page right in her presentation about her background. She grew up in New Jersey and studied social policy and organizational change at Northwestern University. Moved to San Francisco, met Doug Milnes, they moved back to, and she worked for a corporate retail company that and her work was focused on supply chain, inventory strategy, and operations. So quite a lot of a variety of experiences there. Moved back to New Jersey, and in her words, after 15 years in corporate retail, she paused to figure out her next step. Now she's an executive coach, helping people increase fulfillment in career and life. And she's all along had a real heart for sustainable living and has worked hard in her community, making present, helping people find ways to be creating a more sustainable approach to life, and including things like telling us all how to recycle Legos and many other ways to get through our daily lives at home. That's what she'll talk about today. Jen?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, and it's nice to meet all of you. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So as Esther said, I am very passionate about living sustainably. And for me, I didn't realize it as much, except I know for those of us that were on early, we were talking about how certain policies around us can support us to be more sustainable. So when I was living in San Francisco, there were policies where you had to bring your own, or you were encouraged to bring your own grocery bags to the grocery store, or you had to pay 10 cents. And I know each state and each city might be a little bit different, but those types of policies in San Francisco helped me build habits that I didn't realize were so unique. And then moving back to New Jersey, I remember 6 years ago when I moved back to New Jersey and they handed me a plastic bag at CVS to pick up some items at the pharmacy. I was like, what is this? Why are you giving me a bag? I was so trained to have my own bag with me, just because in San Francisco, I trained myself and shifted my habit to bring my own bags. Excuse me. So I think it's, today we'll be talking about lots of different options for how to be more sustainable throughout your daily life. And it is really small habits. And let me share this quote. I'll put up the presentation. Can you see the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. And let me just arrange this so I can see people. Okay, wonderful. So this quote of, we don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. So I really believe that all of us making small choices and just taking small actions, it doesn't have to be every single part of our life, but taking small actions can really make an impact. So we'll dive right in. And as Esther shared, this is a picture of my husband, her son, Doug, and our 2 kids. And for me, again, as I paused after leaving my corporate life and slowed down, I realized how much we were bringing into our home. And really by pausing and just thinking about all the items coming into our home, all of the garbage leaving our house, just seeing the movement of all of that stuff felt really alarming to me. So I think as we, my goal today, as we talk through our, the different options, is really just getting curious around our surroundings and thinking about your daily life and what are the things that are coming, the things that are going as you think about your habits. So what is sustainable living? Or some people talk about zero waste living. So really sending less products or less stuff to the landfill or incinerator. And again, this will depend on where you live, but really trying to minimize the amount of waste that we're creating. And in order to do that, we really want to think about what we're using throughout our daily lives and what garbage or waste we might be producing. And I know for your church, you've been having so many different amazing presentations. So again, you can focus on sustainability from lots of different angles. So this is really, today we'll focus on sort of your daily living. And again, this quote just really at the bottom right says, "It's only a straw," said 8 billion people. So again, we might feel like each of our impact is really small, but each of us making choices can help us help our greater good. So when we think about sustainable living, as I said, there's really lots of different parts of our lives. And I know when I first started off more consciously on this journey, I really started room by room in my house. So I started with the kitchen, then the laundry, and so on. So that's one approach. And with 1 hour today, we won't be able to talk about all of it. So it's really figuring out an area of your life that feels important for you and where you might want to start. Again, I started in the kitchen because we're cooking constantly. So it's really figuring out for you what's an area that you might want to focus on. And I like to use this framework of what's your motivation, number 1. Number 2, what's one change you can make this month? And then 3, what support structures can help you to make that change more easily in your life? So again, trying to think, why are you doing this? What change do you want to make? Again, one small change, and then what can help you affect the change? So for me, my motivation is really my 2 kids and leaving the world a better place. We love going hiking, we love being outside, and really I want to leave our nature and our environment better for them and their future. So I'd love to hear from anyone else. And I really like this to be more interactions. So what motivates you to live a more sustainable lifestyle?
I love our world, and I want to be able to preserve it for not just future, but for the areas that are being harmed now. And yeah.
And that's a great point, right? It's no longer about just the future. Like, we are all experiencing the real and very big impacts of climate change right now. Anyone else? Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Right?
I was just going to say, I think about the plants and the animals, the people, of course, as well, but the plants and animals that are dependent on us making the changes that are necessary to allow the planet to move forward, like the way that we was talking about. I just feel that.
Yeah. So the plants and the animals, if I heard you correctly, that's right. And I know for me, when I got more involved in this, my 5-year-old at the time wanted to be an oceanographer. And we were talking about the whales and animals in the ocean. And I think looking at different parts of our earth, like you said, our animals and plants are very much being impacted. So, Cece, do you have a question?
Well, I just a response to your previous slide. I think one of the things that would drive me to sustainability would be that I believe if you do it properly, I think it makes your life healthier in the process. You know, for example, if you make your own meals as opposed to going and buying something that's already made, I think the food you eat is better for you. And I think it has much less impact on the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was a great transition to the next slide. As I talk about, I really highlight 3 key reasons to minimize our waste and live more sustainably. I think a lot of times we do focus on the environmental reasons. And just as we said, we are seeing the impact of climate change very real. I think the data is coming out about how hot July has been on our Earth this very month, and the very strange and different weather patterns that are affecting us. So I think it's not only those environmental reasons, but Cece, thank you for bringing it up. The second part, the second column I highlight are the health reasons. So really thinking about how living sustainably can be healthier, not only for us, but for the animals and the plants in the rest of our environment. And then the third thing I like to focus on is also finances. Again, if we're not buying extra things that are wasteful, then we are going to save money. Or like I mentioned, when San Francisco, when I was living there and they first moved to bring your own bags and you had to pay 10 cents. And it sounds silly, but that 10 cents really bothered me and that helped create the change. So let me bring my own reusable bag, save the 10 cents. Or right now we'll talk about, I reuse linen napkins or cloth napkins and being able to wash those rather than with my 2 kids constantly using napkins when they were really little, just using napkins and just throwing away so many napkins of the disposable kind and realizing I could use reusables. And the example here I have is the razors. So blade replacements are $5, whereas if you have the reusable, the disposable ones, are $5, but the reusable head razor, and they just change out the blade replacements, are 20 cents. So there are very real situations where you can also save money. So I really think of it as the trifecta. So not only are we doing this for the environment, but also our health and our finances. So lots of reasons to live more sustainably. I think the other thing I want to highlight is a lot of times we can say, oh, well, we're recycling, and recycling is great and it won't save us. It's not the answer to everything. I think the old statistic was only 9% of what can be recycled gets recycled. I think the new statistic is actually even a lower percentage. So as we think about other options, we can, so this chart just highlights options for us so we can refuse. If you go to get takeout food, you could refuse the additional silverware that they give you. Or as we talked about, if you go to the grocery store, you could refuse a bag if you bring your own. So these are other options of as we think about reducing our waste or reusing what we already have. And then rot would mean composting. So again, if you're able to compost where you live, and then recycling, and finally landfill. So thinking about ways we can do all these other things before we get to the point of recycling. Okay, so I'd like to zoom out and think about our choices. As Esther shared, I was in supply chain background, and there's a great organization called thestoryofstuff.org. So you can always go to their website and they have some great videos. But I love this image I've included here because it talks about all the different steps of the things that we consume. So if you can see on the screen, there's extracting. So, if we're going to talk about toilet paper in this case, let's say we're going to cut down the trees to create toilet paper, then it needs to go to the production step, then goes to distribution before we as consumers, consume it, and then disposal. So I think no matter what we're purchasing or using, we tend to see it just in that consumption time period. So if we're using plastic wrap, to wrap some leftovers, we might only think about it during the one day that we have it covering some of our leftovers. But really, as you zoom out and think about all those different steps that had to happen before you could get to the consumption phase and what's going to happen afterwards, can be really powerful just as you look at all the objects in your life. And then as we think about our goal is, instead of a linear economy, where again, we just talked about we're purchasing something, we're using it, and we're throwing it away. We've tried over the recent decades to recycle more. So how can we at least use it a couple more times, but we're still throwing it away? We're still creating waste. So how can we work towards a circular economy where items are getting used more and we're not throwing as much away? So again, just thinking about those different parts of our day in our lives and how could we adjust some habits so that we're not creating as much waste. So before we dive into some ideas, I'd love to hear, what are you already doing at home to live sustainably?
Well, hi, Jen, this is Harry, and we have a long list of things we're trying to do. Solar panels, composting. We try to figure out how not to use plastic. That's really hard. Plastic is in everything, it seems, but we're trying. And we recycle, like you say. We're trying not to buy things that we don't need. And give away, don't throw away, that kind of thing. And we can do without, I guess, is one of our ways of looking at things, my wife Jenny and I. So that's a start of the list.
That's amazing. That's a long list. That's a lot. Thank you for sharing.
There's also a place in Santa Fe that will refill all of your soaps, so that you don't have to get more plastic. That their goal is to decrease plastic. So when you're done with your laundry detergent, your dishwashing and all that stuff, you take the bottles in and they refill from industrial size. And the other thing we do is we dilute our dish soap.
Yeah, and refill.
What store is that?
It's on Rufina. I can show or tell anybody who wants to know.
Do you know the name of it?
No, but they won an award for Best of Santa Fe, but I'll find it before the end of this.
Oh.
Yeah. And refill stores are a wonderful way. Yeah. If you have a reusable container, or even if the last time you bought maybe laundry detergent at the store, you can keep using that container and refill it. So here in New Jersey, there's a refill store near me where I refill my soaps and my shampoo and all of that laundry detergent. So.
They also sell metal straws that I bought for my husband.
Amazing.
And I try to keep away from plastics, which is absolutely impossible. But when I get a plastic bag, especially those that push shut, I put them in a drawer and reuse them. And so now I don't have to buy baggies anymore.
Yeah. And like you said, it can feel really hard to avoid plastic, right? It's everywhere. And each one little thing that you're doing to help avoiding plastic or reusing the plastic that you're getting in your life is really helpful. So I know in my family, again, it was a big challenge removing some plastic items, but one thing at a time, we've been working towards it. And again, I'm not saying we're perfect, nor should any of us feel like we need to be perfect, but really that awareness and attention on what we're doing is amazing.
We've started using bar for dish soap, bar soap, and for shampoo.
Yeah, that's great. And at first, Gail, I don't know if you felt, did it feel like a change in your habit to use the dish bar soap or bar shampoo?
Yeah. Yeah, I love the bar shampoo. That worked fine. The dish soap, I've had to get in the habit of it because you have to scrub on it and then with a little brush and then do it. So it was a different feel.
Yeah.
Beeswax fabric. Or instead of drying that.
Yeah, that's what I have a sample here of beeswax wrap. Is a great example of, instead of plastic wrap, a way to seal leftovers or sandwiches or any food related items.
And the laundry detergent that comes in strips in little cardboard box, I was all excited about until I read that in order to maintain their shapes, they have to use PSAFs. And that you can go online and find the ones that don't have plastic.
Yeah. And that's that there are lots of new options, right? And as you're saying, sometimes it's tricky because sometimes it's not all the way there, like if it still has some of that plastic or, but at least trying different things can be really helpful. And thank you everyone for sharing, right? Even look at you, like us here as a group, hearing all of these amazing things that you're already doing. So congratulations. And I think just keeping focused on what you're already doing is great. And then as you think about today, if you can add one more thing to that list when you're ready, or think of one small thing you can do. So we'll move into talking about some ideas. And again, I know Esther had shared laundry would probably be of interest. So I have some slides about laundry and then some slides about kitchen. So I'm prepared to focus on those areas, but as we're talking through it, you're like, nope, we're good. We want to talk about something else, we can always shift. So we'll start there. So one resource I wanted to share is the Environmental Working Group. So they're an organization that does research on products. So as we were talking about earlier, living more sustainably isn't just, we also want to focus on our health, right? In addition to the environment, it's also our health. So this organization, EWG, has a website and there's a database in that on their website, and you can type in products that you're using to see, based on research, how they've rated these products. And as we think about the products we use in our home, whether it's laundry detergent that we were mentioning, or soap to clean our countertops or our dishes, thinking about the products that we're using and the ingredients that are in those products, we want to make sure they're healthy, not only for ourselves, but for our environment. So this is a great place to start, whether it's laundry or other products. And I'm guessing the refill store that you mentioned in Santa Fe has researched the products that they're offering. But this is a great place to start, and you can look up your products at home. So you can type it in. And this next slide, I have an example. So let's say you're using Tilex bathroom. So you can see it's rated an F on their scale, so not the best rating. And you can go through and understand why, and you can sort of read the research. So this is a great option to look at, okay, what are those products that you're using around your house? Because we do, these products, we breathe them in, they might touch our skin, if it's a laundry or shampoos. And back to what we talked about of being healthy, we want to make sure our products aren't harming us. And then another option, if you're like, ooh, wow, this product I'm using is an F, how do I use something that's better rated? You can look at those products and so here you'll see in this example, I typed in general purpose bathroom cleaner. And back when I took this screenshot, it had 7 products that were rated in the A. So then you can look at what those products are and perhaps think about switching to one of those products. So this is a great resource as you think about, and again, I know we're sort of starting with laundry, but as you might think about your laundry detergent or some of those other products in your house of, are they healthy for me and for the environment? Of course, another option is to make your own. So researching different ways to make your own products. again, then you don't have to necessarily get additional plastic or pay the money for other items. And so this is an example of creating the vinegar water solution for a general house cleaner. But again, everyone needs to figure out what they're willing to do and where they want to start. I think I was doing this for a while, but again, as I'm raising my 2 young kids, I was like, okay, this isn't working for me. But I can do a refill option. So that's where either if at the time I didn't have a refill store, so there were some companies that offer refills systems, or going to your local refill shop. So definitely some other ways to have healthy cleaners without creating as much of the waste. And then in terms of laundry, so I know I love this graphic, and you might not be able to see it from sitting far away, so I can read a little bit of it. But really, the data shows that washing machines use so much water that the average washing machine uses over 13,000 gallons of water per year. So that's as much as you will drink in your lifetime. So that's a lot of water. So as you think about what you're washing and how many times you're washing it and what type of washing machine you have, that can be really helpful. So now there's the high efficiency washing machines, which are helpful if you're in the market for a new washer. And when you're doing laundry, using the cold water setting can also save from an energy perspective. So 75% of the energy when you're doing a load of laundry goes into heating the water. So if you use the cold setting, that can help minimize your usage of our resources. So, but the pie chart talks about the usage of our water. So you'll see washing clothes takes about 21% of the typical water that you're using in a day, versus the toilets at 25%, showering 12%, faucet 14%, and a leak 22%. So again, as we think about laundry as an area to minimize the usage of our resources, using choosing your washing machine if possible, the setting that you're using, and how often you're using it. Then again, the products as you're using, as you think about your washing machine, again, a refill option is great. And they do make more the concentrated laundry detergents now. So I know someone said they were watering down their laundry detergent. So again, just thinking about the type of laundry detergent you're using and how much. There's been studies showed that the guidance on the back sometimes is telling you to use more than you need to. So again, thinking about how much you're using, you don't need a ton. And again, I think the old kind I used to use, maybe you needed a really big cup full, but now if you're using a concentrated amount, a much smaller amount of the detergent is needed. And you could also make your own. So again, I have some friends that are making their own. For me, that wasn't where I wanted to spend my time, but the refill option is a great one, especially if you have one in Santa Fe. That's amazing. Any questions or discussion around laundry area?
Well, what we do, Jen, is we never use the dryer because it takes so much energy. So we always just hang our clothes in a spare room. My wife lived in Australia for many, many years, and they never had dryers down there. So she wasn't used to it at all. And coming back was like, this is terrible. So we never do. So just another thought about drying.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, air drying is definitely, it's not only better for the environment, it's better for our clothes. So the dryer itself, the heat can affect some of the fabrics. And I think I actually do have, a slide about drying clothes. So here, what I focused on when using the dryer was to stop using the fabric softeners and dryer sheets. So again, some of the dryer sheets do have chemicals on those dryer sheets. So as we think about, I think it's a good example, right? You're buying a product, so you're spending money on something that you will throw away and something that has some chemicals on it that aren't good for your body. So a replacement option that you can see in the picture here are the wool dryer balls. So the wool dryer balls can reduce the static, so have the same impact as the dryer sheets without the extra chemicals. And they can also reduce your drying time since they help mix up the clothes. That's a very technical term, to help the clothes dry efficiently. And again, or you can air dry, and that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Okay. So next I was going to move into some kitchen ideas. So as we think about minimizing your waste in the kitchen, again, this is something that we're all doing every day, it's eating. So as you think about how you're purchasing your groceries, how you're planning for your food for the week, a great option is doing meal planning. So planning ahead what you want to eat. And again, some people, I know for myself and my husband with our 2 kids, it helps to sort of lay out, for the week, what we're going to be eating. This way we're making sure we're buying the appropriate amount rather than over purchasing. I know sometimes when you go to the grocery store, it's easy to grab a few extra items, but that can be wasteful and not be what we need for the week. So again, as we try to think about not over purchasing and really only buying what we'll be using. And I do think this is an interesting quote from the NRDC that up to 40% of the food in the US is never eaten. And 40 of that's from residential home. 40% is from residential homes. So really thinking about what we're buying and trying to use it so that we're not wasting food. And we talked about some of this, but when you're going grocery shopping, trying to think about the items that you're purchasing. So you can see, I don't know if this image is clear from where you're sitting, but there's the bananas wrapped in plastic wrap. So this is where when you're at the grocery store, trying to think about if there's options, if there's more naked food, meaning not wrapped in plastic wrap, that might be a better option than buying the one wrapped in plastic. And I know we talked about earlier, bringing your own produce bags. So if you have the cloth produce bags, and I know remembering to bring them can be the hard part, but once you've bought them, either placing them in your car or putting a sticky note somewhere to remind yourself to bring your own bags. And this way you can put your fruit and your vegetables or any items in those produce bags rather than using the plastic produce bags at the grocery store. And bringing your own shopping bags. And then I included this example of the Snyder's, it's pretzels. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a big plastic bag full of smaller plastic bags of the pretzels. And again, I know everyone is at different stages in the type of food you might need. But for myself, if I have my 2 little kids, yes, it's easier to buy this. So if in their lunches, I could just put these little bags with pretzels in it, but it's not as eco-friendly. So if I were able to, buy a big thing of pretzels, or in our grocery store, we do have the bulk bins. So if I can, ideally get pretzels out of the bulk bins, put it in my own container, and then when I'm home, put it in smaller containers. So I know in my house, we have lots of different containers. So I'm holding up, this is like a small little, stainless steel option. So it can get in the dishwasher or hand washed, but just a different way to pack snacks. And if you buy, again, a bigger container of the food, you can break it up into your own little small packages instead of buying, in this case, the big bag with the little packages. Another thing is then when you get your food home from the grocery store, really thinking about how you're storing the food. And I know someone shared that they were using beeswax wrap, which is a great example. And as I showed here, this is kind of a small size, but this is a great alternative to plastic wrap or Ziploc bags. So as you think about, you can see in the picture, if you're covering your leftovers with plastic wrap, that's something that you're using for a very short amount of time and then throwing away. So as we talked about earlier, just observing the different things you're using every day that you're very much paying for plastic wrap that you're going to throw away. And I think that's just a helpful reminder as you look at those items of, okay, I'm purchasing this and I'm going to throw it away.
What is a stasher bag?
Yeah, so I have an example of a stasher bag. So it's a silicone bag. There's different sizes and shapes, and think of it as a Ziploc bag replacement. So like this is pretty much the size of a Ziploc bag, like a traditional maybe sandwich bag if it's a sandwich, and then you can seal it. So let's say I was sending, my kids with a sandwich into school. I could put it in this bag and then they come home with it. And there's different shapes and sizes. So we have some really big ones for maybe, if we have leftovers, like leftover corn on the cob might go in a really big one, or we have much smaller ones, which again, if I want to put pretzels for a snack or trail mix, I can put it in these. And you can put them in the dishwasher or wash them by hand, but they're made of silicone. And I've researched it with the company, it's food grade, healthy silicone. So this is good for you and good for the environment. Anyone else? Has anyone used the stasher bags? I know it was at Esther's house and I saw them. CC, you have?
Yeah. Ziplocs can be washed and reused. All you got to do is turn them inside out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people look at Ziplocs, for example, as one-time use, but they can be used multiple times. Now, plastic wrap, on the other hand, that's a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want to sit and wash all that little plastic. But, if you think about, if you use your creative mind, you can see a lot of things that you could do just to make it, more sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah. And I love that focus on creativity, right? As you look around your daily lifestyle, how can you get creative so that you're not creating more waste? Yeah, I see in the front row.
Yeah. So this is really simple and low tech, but just looking at the picture on the left side here, the little bowls with the plastic wrap over them. My husband started doing this thing that I think is just creative, which is if he puts something, left over in a bowl like that, instead of putting plastic wrap over it, he just takes another like a little plate. A little saucer or, the salad plate, depending on the size of the bowl, puts it over the top of it and puts the whole thing into the refrigerator, which works great. And then you're not using plastic wrap. So it's an idea for anyone.
That's a great idea. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think using other bowls or plates can definitely help. That's great. And again, back to that creativity. Right? Like thinking creatively, what can I use that this way I'm not creating more waste? That's great. Okay. Then here I'm showing the example of using reusable linens. So whether it's for napkins or to get rid of paper towels. And I can tell you the napkin one, again, for my family was easier than the paper towels. We definitely used to go through a ton of paper towels. And as we think about it, though, again, back to our different options or reasons, I would say, our motivations to be more sustainable, not only is using paper towels bad for the environment, just the extra waste that we're producing, but the cost. So in this example, if you're buying a big set of paper towels, maybe 6 times a year at $15, you're spending $90 for the year. Whereas if you're using old towels that you cut up, or we even have some old clothes that were stained or not usable anymore that we've cut up, or you can purchase something called an unpaper towel, which is a fancy version of something you could use at $14. Then you can reuse those items throughout the year. And so you're saving money and you're not creating more waste. by buying paper towels. And again, as you think about paper towels, usually they come wrapped in plastic, and then each of the plastic wrap paper towel rolls is all wrapped in plastic. So just trying to think of other options. And again, for our family, switching to not using paper towels was really hard. And that's where in the beginning, I talked about support structures. So as you're making changes in your life, it might feel really hard at first, but think about what will help make it easier. So the support structure in this example, you can see the image on the right is an example of our bucket that we keep in our pantry. So my kids labeled it, it says dirty napkin bin, but that's where we put all of our dirty napkins that we've used, as well as the paper towel replacements, those towels. And so we just have this bucket very handy in the kitchen so that whenever we're done with our dinner, with our meal, or done cleaning up from the meals, we can put all of these linens in that bucket. And then I know when that bucket is full, it's time for me to do a load of laundry and wash those. So again, thinking about how can I make it easier? I know some people, if you don't have that bucket close by and you're running to wherever your washer machine is, that's extra steps potentially, therefore making it harder for you to change that habit. So as you think about whatever item or step you're trying to change in your living, really making some adjustment or making it as easy as possible with different support structures, like a bucket in your kitchen.
We did the non-paper towel thing. We bought white ones. I recommend something that doesn't show stains.
Yeah.
We use microfiber. And they last forever and ever and ever and ever. And I use ones that are semi-nice at the dining room table, and then who cares what everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
We use a company called Norwex that has special antibacterial properties because of little silver fibers they sew in. So you can use them for longer without having to wash them, and they stay very clean.
That's amazing.
I've used several things that were kind of worn out, like some tea towels that got badly stained or something like that. And I cut them down to napkin size and make them into napkins. And I did it last summer. I did it with the shower curtain when we switched our bathtub with a curtain to a stand-up shower with doors. So it was just a cloth one, and I made it into a bunch of napkins, and it's working great.
That's great. And again, that's back to that creativity. It sounds like, Esther, when you were not using the shower curtain as a curtain, it was like, well, how can I repurpose this? How can I use this instead of throwing it away and creating waste? That's great. And I know some people, so again, and everyone's at a different place in their journey. I heard some people might be doing a lot of things. Some people might be, thinking about this might feel new. But really thinking about what you're throwing away can be one step or one place to start. So if Esther was about to throw away that shower curtain, it could be like, okay, let me just pause and think, is there anything else I could do with this? Maybe the answer is no, but at least pausing to think about it and get creative and curious can really help us minimize our waste. Okay. So one other thing that I know I found interesting on my journey was helping food last longer the way we store it. So again, I don't know if you've had fruit that goes bad or vegetables that go bad. And again, then you're wasting the food, you're not using it, and you wasted money spending it on something that you didn't eat. So you can research different ways to store your food so it lasts longer. So one example is carrots stored in water will last longer, or thinking about in your fruit bowl, what fruits you're putting next to each other. Like in this case, bananas with apples, the ethylene that gets produced by the bananas can impact the apples. and make them rot faster. So thinking about how you're storing your food can also help it last longer, so you're not wasting as much. And then I'll wrap up with this example maybe, and then we can make sure that we've answered any questions. So this is, and Gail, I think you had mentioned using the block soap. So on the left is an image of block soap instead of liquid soap to do your dishes. So often the block soap comes with pretty minimal packaging. I know the kind I get, I think, comes in a cardboard box, so that then I can easily recycle the cardboard box. Rather than, if you're buying dish soap, liquid dish soap, it might come in an additional plastic container. Or as we talked about, if you do have a refill store in Santa Fe, that's amazing. And you could refill your containers there if you like liquid dish soap. There's also a company, before we had a refill store here in New Jersey, I used to use this company called Fillery, which was a subscription model, and they would send you soap and you would send back the container and they would reuse it. So that's another option. But if you have a local refill store, that's a great option. So I'd like to open it up to any questions as we've been talking about sustainably living. Anything coming to mind or any questions? Cece.
As a kid, I grew up in western Kansas and eastern Colorado, and I was the son, of basically a poor farmer. And one of the things that I see happening today in terms of sustainability were standard practices as I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And one of my pet peeves is that the way we clean dishes. When I was a kid, you had two, I'm going to call them small tubs, they'd fit in a sink. And one you had soap and water, and the other you had hot water for rinse. And you would, you'd wash the dish, put it in there, then put it in a drying rack. Mm-hmm. And it took less than a half an hour to do dishes for any meal. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then with the dishwasher, when they first came out, you had to rinse the food off of them. Well, that takes a lot of water. Because the most common thing people do is just let the water run and, do that. And even if you get an energy efficient dishwasher, it still takes a long time, and they do, 3 or 4 cycles. And, that just, I understand why wives didn't like to be tied to the kitchen washing dishes after the meal. As a kid, part of my task was that, you help do that. But if we could, I haven't had the advantage of being probably the oldest person on this thing. And when I think about the sorts of things that was done in my much younger years, if we did some of that, even part of that, it'd be great. Mm-hmm. So that's some of, what you presented, I think, are great ideas. I'm not mm-hmm. trying to take that away. Mm-hmm. That there's so many more that with just a little bit of thought, could be better. We wash clothes once a week. And instead of daily, we have, energy efficient, laundry washer and the dryer. And, Harry mentioned back in Australia, them sell dryers. Well, the thing about it is if you're going to dry clothes like that, you gotta have a place to hang them.
Mhm.
And if you got kids of any any number of kids, they take a lot of clothes.
Mhm.
And so, so you have to have a clothesline of some sort. But that's a one-time cost. And so those are, as I say, when I think about it, those are the sorts of things that the wisdoms of the older people could be used,
Mhm.
To make the things more sustainable.
Mhm.
That's it.
Jen, do you want to unshare your screen?
Oh, yeah.
so we can- yeah,
Yeah.
you can
Let
see
me-
better.
Yeah. Apologies. There we go. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, Cece. I think, because I do these types of presentations with lots of different audiences. And I think there is that wisdom, right, from perhaps how things were done. I do think a lot of our culture today is focused on efficiency, speed. You can get an Amazon package within a day. But as we, I think, try to help pause, and again, that's what I love talking to different people about, is that pausing and slowing down a little bit to think about what we're doing and how could it be done differently. Because otherwise we are producing a lot of waste. And everyone figuring out what works for them based on their lifestyle. So it won't be the same thing for everybody, but yeah, figuring out what works for each of us.
Yeah, well, you can do, Amazon now, their cardboard boxes they use for shipping contain, I think it's 15 to 20% less paper than it used to be. But they're just as strong.
Mhm.
If you're sending clothes, you don't need a crate. You just need something that holds it together. But so
Yeah, and I'm curious, you talked about circular economy, which is something that everyone my age learned about, and so how are you seeing in your background how these corporate retail is there movement towards that, and how is that happening? How is it becoming affordable for people where convenience and affordability is more important? I'm curious where you see this going more mainstream and maybe even having become less of a positive thing and more of just natural.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely see retailers taking steps in the right direction, right? As retailers research, okay, what are more sustainable options from, whether it's the packaging, the shipping, really trying to think about what they're using. And I think it also depends on the company, right? I think some of the companies that are more progressive and the sustainability is a bigger priority for them. I think I just bought an item of clothing from a company called Prana. And again, they're using, I think it might be compostable packaging. And so as you look at that packaging, right, I know for me now, I make my purchasing decisions based on that. So if this company will focus on their packaging and this is important to them, and they're not just saying they're focused on sustainability, but they're actually taking steps towards it, that's where I'm going to spend my money. So I try to help encourage people to spend their money on companies that are making those choices, and really doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, I think bigger companies, it takes longer just from the amount of, steps that it takes as they make it happen. But I think each of us vote with our dollars.
Exactly.
I think that's a big way I put it, is we vote with our dollars. And if you are purchasing from a company that is doing those things that are more sustainable, that will help in the long run.
just practical question, which is the refill stations. Do they have options for, say, biodegradable versus not, if you're refilling your laundry soap? How does that work?
Often it's glass, get a glass bottle and you can refill it, not recycle it.
But what I mean is the
Just so-
product.
Yeah, I buy only unscented and stuff that, and they really have a huge choice there, and they really don't, they won't sell you stuff that's bad for the earth. Because their whole point is to decrease plastics, and they're not gonna want you to put a toxin in instead of a plastic. And they're pretty well thought, they've been doing it for about 6 years or so.
And you can always ask them. So when you go to the store, you can ask them that question. I was working on opening a zero waste store, and I was very meticulous, just like the other person shared, I was very meticulous about what products I was going to offer in my store, because I didn't want to offer a subpar product because that wouldn't fit the bigger part of the mission. So yeah, I would just ask at your refill store how they're choosing the product, and you can ask them that.
Thank you. I have definitely used the EWG site a lot to kind of look at products I would want to use, and I've done a lot of research that way. So I'm just, kind of aware of that and wondering.
And I did get coffee beans from a compostable company that sent it with compostable. Unfortunately, their coffee just didn't, I did it for a year, tried everything, but I just didn't like their coffee. So if anybody has someplace other than Driftway, let me know, because I'd like to go back to a compostable container, but it's got to be good coffee.
Well, we're almost out of time. Is there one more question you might ask? It's a burning question.
I guess, Jen, what I see in these things that many of us can do when we have the resources to vote with our dollars, but when these other options are cheaper and more convenient for people, where's that movement going to be heading towards, and how do, I mean, I think of our GDP as 70% consumption, right? And so it's just like it feels maybe moving too slow, and like how does this movement, how do we latch onto this movement? I know we used to bring business cards to restaurants and say, don't give out straws, but it's for people that the affordability is more of a thing, or the conveniences. How do we encourage and motivate into that circular economy?
Yeah, I would say, it sounds like you're doing amazing work. So thank you for your contributions. And I know to me, it can get very overwhelming, right? Like we need to be doing so much more. But as, to me, I also take that into consideration of like, as humans, we can only do so much depending on where we're each at. So I think trying to do what each of us can in different ways. So I know for me, that's when I moved to New Jersey and I saw this as a bigger issue, just because of some of the policies in New Jersey versus California, I started doing educational talks like this at my library and then I also joined in my town. There's a group called Green Summit, which does other educational outreach to people and organizations. So maybe at the school PTOs, we'll talk to the school PTOs about not having plastic cups at field day, have all the kids bring their reusable water bottles. So I think it really takes, my personal opinion is it takes individuals doing what they can, as well as then organizations and politicians. So like both the tops down to affect change and bottoms up, and just all doing the best we can. And I know, but I really believe in the ripple effect. Each of us doing what we can will have that impact on other people. So I know even my kids at school, they'll start talking about, things that are very like we compost at home, and a lot of other kids don't. And those little things I think can have a big impact.
I really appreciate that perspective. I noticed that earlier in your talk, and I just you know, we can get overwhelmed. And if we get overwhelmed, it's like people, I think, feel like, well, I might as well not do anything because I can't solve the whole problem. But I think I completely agree with you that, if we all do a little bit, like what we can, and then we can move toward doing more, but at least we're doing something. And, a million people doing something together is, like you said at the beginning, a lot more than, one person or a few people doing everything right.
Yeah. And I do like the snowball effect. Hopefully, my hope is impacts people, or like people catch on to that, right? Like for me personally, it was like once I started changing one thing in our house, I wanted to change another thing and then another thing. And just that snowball effect of like, wow, okay, if everyone each month changed one thing in their life, like that snowball effect of, adding one more thing that you're adjusting over time can have a big impact. So I would say, I know we're out of time, but as everyone leaves this talk, I would love for each person to think about like, what's one thing you want to do differently in your life over the next month, or one thing you want to share back to that with other people, but one way you want to make a change. So thank you for having me.
Jen, thank you so much. Wonderful and helpful, all the way from the East Coast on us to New Mexico. And we are grateful for you doing this and taking the time to help us out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Esther, for that recommendation. So with all that said, next Sunday is first Sunday of the month. We have one service at 10 o'clock. And so we'll take a break from Earth Care and come back on the 13th of August with 3 more Sundays of Earth Summer. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. Take care. Enjoy.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.